Is American citizenship dying? Is multiculturalism and immigration and erosion of citizenship rights destroying our national identity? Stay tuned. We'll talk with one of America's premier foreign correspondents, author and columnist, Georgie Ann Geyer, next on Full Disclosure. Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Today on Full Disclosure, we're going to bring you the news behind the news about what's happening to America from the perspective of Georgie Ann Geyer, one of our nation's most prominent journalists. She was the first journalist to interview Fidel Castro, Saddam Hussein, and the Ayatollah Khomeini. She's always been first in her field. Once she was even jailed visiting Angola in anticipation of a Soviet coup against the Marxist Cubans. Now she's turned her focus on America, authoring a new book entitled Americans No More, The Death of American Citizenship, released last month by Atlantic Monthly Press. Thanks so much for being with us, Georgie.
My pleasure, Leslie.
You know, I think that our viewers would be very interested to hear this quote that you have from your book when you talk about citizenship. Citizenship is the unique and ennobling history of the new post-feudal modern relationship of the individual human being to the state, of the state to the individual, and of the human being to his fellow man. It's a dignified commitment of respect, of responsibility, even of friendship and love. It offers a national and voluntary covenant and a social contract made in free will and in the integrity of the individual human being's individual conscience. Wow, that really says it all, doesn't it?
You know, it really does, Leslie. I think Americans have in many ways forgotten what it was that brought us to citizenship, which is the only oath that we all make to one another and to our nation at the same time. Because before in history, people were subjects. They were subjects of princes or of dictators. And all over the world that I cover, they still are. Only in the development of this voluntary oath to one another and to our nation do we become really free people.
You know, I can remember back about 20 or so years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, where God and country and patriotism and citizenship were all things that we really strive for, and people put their hands over their hearts. What's happening to that? Why is it eroding?
Well, what I've seen, Leslie, is a lot of things are happening at the same time. You know, the irony is, I cover the world, really. This is unusual for me, but I love our country, and when I saw this happening, I had to write this. But all over the world, I'm invited to conferences, U.S. Information Agency, Czechoslovakia, Russia, Asia. They're studying the American system, what I call the American system and the American story, because our system is preeminent in the world. At the same time, I come back to America, and we're losing it here. A lot of things came together. Multiculturalism in the universities, which is really a breaking down of the country into group rights. All the things that those of us in civil rights fought against, segregation by race, by creed, secondarily by language, all those things are now coming back. We're becoming a resegregated society. That isn't my vision of America. Massive illegal immigration, we know all those problems. Massive illegal voting. Illegals are voting all the country. The downgrading of the civic education. There is no civic education. And the downgrading of the citizenship tests. All these things and many more came together.
Well, civic responsibility, that's always been something that citizenship has been associated with.
Right.
That citizens have a responsibility to make the system work. Do you feel that there are forces that want to undermine that from happening, or?
Yes, there are real forces that are working to do that, and not working conspiratorially. It's all on the surface. I know you know a great deal about this. And then there's a lot of lethargy of American citizens who just don't want to really be bothered and don't want to hear all this. I mean, there is lateral funding from big foundations like Ford Foundation for ethnic groups like some Hispanic lobbies who don't represent the Hispanic American community, which is generally very patriotic. And that lateral funding through groups like MALDEV, like the Council of La Raza, then they use it to fight what I call citizenship issues. They fight those through the courts. So never do you have the people voting on these. That's only one. You have the big corporations, which are globalized today, who don't care about American citizenship either. They think, you know, they're living in Singapore and Bellagio and Rome and Berlin, and they're not caring about the American working class. So you have it on the far left and you have it on the far right. And I'm a radical moderate.
Well, you mentioned the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Education Fund, MALDEF. They were pioneers with lawsuits to really basically change immigration policy through the courts. And one of those policies that comes to mind that has had a vast impact on our schools is that Plyler versus Doe in Texas.
Yes, 82, exactly.
Do you see that would ever be reversed, or are we headed away from that, or are we continuing on?
I'm glad you brought that up, Leslie, because a year and a half ago I spent another week along the border, this time on the Texas side. Usually I go Mexican side. I speak fluent Spanish, Portuguese, etc. And I went to the Brownsville School District, Independent School District. They have met with their 4 top people, superintendent and 3 others. They have 40,000 students in a city of 130,000, which is an enormous number. And they were telling me this terrible, they weren't complaining a lot, but they have all these children coming across, many of them just coming across every day from Mexico. They have no idea how many illegal students they have. The federal government's answer is that they will give them money for the illegal students, but they're forbidden to ask them if they're citizens. So I said, well, what do you do? And they said, we just make it up. And they're desperate. Now, the answer has become things that are really unpleasant, like Proposition 187, like taking benefits away from legals, or illegals and illegals. And when people say to me, well, isn't that unpleasant? I say, yes, it's very unpleasant. Give me an alternative. Give us an alternative to deal with these problems. We don't have any connection anymore between one's commitment to citizenship and the benefits of the society. And that's where we're seeing the broken link today.
In other words, citizenship rights really are eroding because we're bestowing them on people who aren't citizens.
Right. They have no meaning, really, Leslie. I mean, non-citizens are voting all over the country, welfare benefits, and what is really our fault, I blame illegals for, they're breaking the law, although I say they're much more innocent than we are because we're the ones that have allowed this to go down. There's no civic education in the citizenship tests. They don't even have to speak English most of the time. Let me give you my, quote, favorite, I'm saying that cynically, question on one of the citizenship tests, and there are many of them, and they're very easy. You and I could pass them because you go to the INS, and they give you the test questions 20, and they give you the answers, so you don't have to worry.
Oh, my.
But question 83 says, name 3 benefits to becoming American citizen, 3 reasons. There are 3 reasons only: to get a federal job, to bring my relatives here, and to get a passport to travel abroad. That's what we have made of American citizenship.
Oh my goodness. Well, let me ask you. You mentioned Proposition 187 in California, which basically was a reaction to all of the benefits and all the problems created in the schools and so forth. Do you think that the people of the state of California or any other state that put together an initiative like that to stop it have a right to do so?
Of course they do. Of course they do. Not only a right, as I said, I think it's unpleasant, but what other choice do they have when all the decisions are made laterally through the courts and through the bureaucracies, and the average citizen's vote has nothing to say about it? It's the same with these recent propositions about not giving the children of illegal schooling. And when people ask me about this, I tell them about Brownsville as one example, and I say, yeah, it is unpleasant. Give me an alternative. Then what is your alternative? Well, the alternative, the rational, humane alternative, should be control of the borders and control of citizenship. Then you don't have to have a 187.
Well, I wonder, what about the federal courts? 187 passed, overwhelmingly, and now the federal courts have stepped in at the request of the advocates.
Exactly.
And they've said that the people's vote doesn't count. Where are the people to turn when the voting process, when the initiative process is stopped?
Well, that's right, Leslie. It's part of the same story. Once again, the people have made their voice known, and the advocacy groups go to the courts, and you get a certain kind of judge, and they look for a certain kind of judge, and the people's voice is thwarted. And that's why I say to people, all right, give me an alternative, but let's deal with the problems. The voice of the people is just not being heard. Citizenship is dying in this country.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to ask Georgianne Geyer about these advocates for immigration and who's behind them.
Full Disclosure is a non-commercial public affairs program sponsored by the Citizens Protection Alliance. For a transcript or videotape copy of today's program or a listing of airtimes and channels, call our toll-free number at 1-800-867-7777 or visit our website at www.fulldisclosure.net.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure. We're talking with Georgianne Geyer about her new book, Americans No More and the Death of American Citizenship. You are talking about the advocates for immigrants' rights and the role that the special interests are playing on this whole erosion of citizenship. Tell us a little bit about what you know about these advocates. Who are they, and what is their agenda?
Well, Leslie, a lot of them came out of the civil rights fight. After civil rights for African Americans was more or less won in the 60s, and it was a fight that I passionately supported. We mustn't think that what we're talking about now is an extension of civil rights, because it is not, and that's a mistake that a lot of people made. But a lot of the activists there, the really trained, organized, were looking around for something new, and they changed over to many of these newer advocacy groups, like Council of La Raza in the Hispanic levels, MALDEF, but there are others. I mean, in other areas, they're radical feminists, etc. And there also is a real renewal of far left groups in Southern California. Now, I saw the video of the 4th of July attack on these middle-class, middle-aged American immigration control folks in LA, and I was just stunned.
It was the communist group that threw the first punch. We were not at this corner exactly when the clash began, but it did appear to us that the communists came prepared for trouble and prepared for combat. With 6 packs of soft drinks, carrying them, a full soft drink can can make a potent missile when it's thrown, and many of the cans were, and some of them were thrown back. The combatants faced off here, mostly young people on the communist and Latino side, mostly older people on the anti-illegal immigrant group. We saw several of the older people bleeding from the head.
I was holding my flag. These people came across the street. I wasn't doing anything. I was just holding my flag. All at once, when I'm grabbing my flag, it hit me over the head.
The communist group battered the anti-illegal immigration group with sign sticks and soft drink cans, as you may be seeing now, some in the Voices group.
Because this, to me, represented something very, very new. Now, I have, over my time in Latin America, and I love Latin America, I've devoted a lot of my life to it, I have watched the far-left groups there. And I thought that they were, after the fall of communism, that they were pretty much quiescent and pretty much, as they say in Spanish, cuatro gatos, 4 cats, i.e. nobody's there. Well, I don't believe that anymore. This attack on Los Angeles on July 4th, which was very brutal, 200 people attacking these middle-aged people who had no weapons or anything when they were peaceably demonstrating. They were all, their signs said Progressive Labor Party, Aztlán, which is, of course, one of the radical Hispanic names for the Southwest, which they will reclaim. Progressive Labor Party, I look back in my notes and my histories, it was a Maoist group that arose in the 60s, that very radical, very extreme, even in Marxist terms, very active then in California. And it sort of died out. And I must say, I had thought that it was gone. I had thought that guerrillas were gone in Mexico, which they're not. We're all seeing a resurgence of the same far left there. And And also, I never took the idea of Aslan very seriously. I'm a realist, I think, I hope at best. This idea that certain Hispanic groups would reclaim the Southwest as the Republic of Aslan.
We are the majority here, and we are not going to be pushed around. We're here in Westwood. This is the 4th time we've been here in the last 2 months to show white Anglo-Saxon Protestant LA, the few of you who remain, that we are the majority, and we claim this land as ours. It's always been ours, and we're still here. And none of this talk about deporting. If anybody's going to be deported, it's going to be you.
I do take it seriously now. I do take it. Again in August, a lot of those same folks demonstrating again with the permit. This time we're attacked by 600 people from this Progressive Labor Party, mostly Hispanics, but also others.
Full disclosure has covered some of the activities of the pro-immigration rights organizations. And what we have observed at some of the rallies and the marches that they put on are the banners of the Communist Party. Mm-hmm. What significance is there of the presence of these blatantly communist workers among these marches? Do you think that these nonprofit groups that are being funded by our federal government are actually embracing the communist movement?
I don't know if some people have told me that some of those groups in that attack group on July 4th and in August got funding from the government. I don't know that, and I don't want to say something I'm not sure of. What I am sure of is this Progressive Labor Party is a very, very radical, very extremist, very violent group. It's always been very violent. And what we do know is that a lot of the ideological arch of this, or ideology of it, comes out of the Chicano studies groups in the University of California system. Now, this has been documented many times, including Peter Scarry's excellent book, Mexican Americans, The Ambivalent Minority. They do not represent the masses of Hispanic American citizens, and I think we have to repeat that over and over and over. But what worries me as someone who covers Latin America and for many years has, you now see this resurgence of the same radical Maoist groups in Mexico with this new guerrilla group, goes across 5 states. You see its resurgence in Colombia with the drug cartels, and I mean, it would not surprise me at all to see links there.
You mentioned the University of California and the Chicano groups. The University of California had actually implemented a program to give undocumented students the same status as if they were legal residents of the United States. Do you think that an institution like the university has an agenda themselves about immigration and kind of absorbing the flow of people illegally coming here?
Well, it surely looks like it has the general leftist, multiculturalist agenda that almost all the universities do today. I mean, it's no secret. You and I are not talking about something that these folks deny. I mean, you know, most of academia today say they're multiculturalists, that they're radicals, that they're Marxists even. So that doesn't surprise me. I am a purist on this, Leslie. I believe that human beings should all have the self-respect and the respect from their fellows that they should make a commitment to the country and to the nation and to the polity that they wish to join. And I know from history, and I'm a lover of history and I'm very good on history, that when you confuse your borderlands, like Alsace-Lorraine between Germany and France, like the Oder-Neisse line between Poland and Germany, like Poland as a nation between Russia and Germany, when you confuse your borderlands and you confuse your citizenship, you are asking for big trouble. You are asking for conflict. You are building it into your daily life.
Well, now you've touched on something that gives this a global flavor, really. Do you think that there is a global plan or a concerted effort to take the wealth from the United States and level things out so that we're more equal with the rest of the other countries?
Well, there's a half-baked. I'm not saying there's any international conspiracy. I mean, obviously, the Soviet Union wanted to destroy us and defeat us. I mean, they said it all the time. But this is more this half-baked a multiculturalist ideology from the universities, a lot of Christian guilt thrown in. A lot of the churches are to blame for this. They feel guilty about what we did to the Indians or what we did in Vietnam. I feel guilty about that too, but that doesn't change what I know we have to do to keep ourselves a coherent nation. There are groups in Mexico. The Mexican government now wants dual nationality, so Mexicans who have not become Americans can vote in both places. I mean, there's so many different movements going on that confuse the primary issue, which is who belongs, why, and where. And if we don't answer this rationally and humanely and reasonably, but tough-mindedly now, we're going to be answering it in ways that I don't want to contemplate later.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, we're going to ask Georgianne Geyer about what is the impact of immigration on our national security and our national elections.
Emmy Award-winning analysis and insights not available anywhere else. Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton brings the news behind the news to viewers throughout California. From California's criminal justice system and illegal immigration to LA's war on terror, uncovering the truth from Capitol Hill to the Supreme Court. Honored with an Emmy Award for excellence in informational and public affairs programming. Watch Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton every week on this channel.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure. We're talking with Georgianne Geyer about the national security issue and how immigration is impacting it. What impact is all of the influx of the people coming here from other countries having on our national security?
Well, let's see, it happens on a lot of levels. And again, I'm not at all against immigration. We want immigrants. We want them to come legally. I mean, that's what we want. And we want the decisions to be made in this country and in terms of our own citizenship needs. So I want that to be very, very clear. But when you have an area that is as incoherent and imprecise and ungoverned as Southern California is today, and some of our ports of entry like New York and Los Angeles, and I would say Miami as well, you are asking for all kinds of trouble. First of all, we have gigantic drug cartels now. They're taking over the Caribbean. They're taking over Mexico. Colombia is probably gone just about as a nation. So just on that one issue, there's a tremendous danger in what we're doing. But I think the most dangerous thing of all is that we're inviting people into our country and not asking them to become citizens, not asking who they are or what they're doing or why they want to come. And the message we're giving them is even worse. And throughout all of the citizenship materials, it's benefits, benefits, benefits. So how can you blame people coming here for thinking that we're anything more than a big cornucopia and illegality?
Yeah, you mentioned that Southern California is ungoverned. I think that just kind of hit me right between the eyes. A lot of people don't seem to perceive that, yet we know there's truth if someone of your stature can observe that.
Well, let's think about the nation state. Let's see. What do you know what the first duty of the president is to secure the borders of the nation. Now, we are not doing that. I'm not saying that Southern California is not ungoverned, but I'm saying it's really incoherent and thus ungovernable. Because if you don't know who people are, if you don't know what they're doing here or where their commitment is, you're not governing yourselves. And that wonderful woman, the late Barbara Jordan, who died much too soon, who was head of the Commission on Immigration Reform, she called for a national ID system. She called for an Americanization program. These are unspeakable. You're not supposed to say those words today. But she was right.
Well, speaking of Americanization, that reminds me of elections. What about national elections? The motor voter bill was enacted, and recently our Secretary of State here in California has taken a bold move to purge 700 non-citizens from the rolls after they sought a driver's license. What do you know nationally about the impact of non-citizen voting right now?
Well, Leslie, that is the most shocking thing to Americans when I say, and it goes into the book in some detail, I said, well, non-citizens are voting all over the country. And their first response is, no, that can't be possible. One, because voting is it's probably the core of citizenship. If you name your first duty and privilege, it's voting. And then they say, and two, it's illegal. Well, both of those things happen. Yes, you are right. But non-citizens are voting all over. In some towns, like Tacoma Park, Maryland, have voted to have non-citizens vote in local elections. But all over the country, the TV in Chicago did a big series about how all you have to do is get a library card or have a fraudulent document, and how illegals were getting their voter cards right away, even not speaking English. Well, the Los Angeles Examiner, 4 or 5 years ago, did research into this, and they came out with the conclusion that at least 20 congressmen or women were elected with the illegal vote.
My.
But this is much more now, because that was interesting to hear about the 700. I didn't know about that.
And you cover this in your book, Americans No More. You've got in there about voter fraud and all about the groups and organizations that are, I guess you called it dumbing down the citizenship process.
They're defining down, and we're dumbing down it. I don't take us off the hook. I mean, we've allowed our schools to become bereft of civic education, and the citizenship test is just a reflection of that.
Well, now, is there any hope that we can restore citizenship? Can we ever make a turn back?
I think there's still time, Leslie. My judgment in the last chapter is that we have maybe 20 years, but there's also a point when a country comes to critical mass, and we will just become neutralized in the world, because we'll be squabbling and using all of our energy to fight and squabble for privilege internally. But I do in the last chapter, which I called Another Voice, which is the voice of the strong, moderate, but tough-minded center. I go into all the new citizenship groups, which are bubbling up all over the country. They're everywhere, and people know something's wrong. Now, how do we get those together? You're going to have to tell me that.
What advice would you give to citizens groups how they could be most effective? What could they do to be most effective?
Join some of the national groups, work for it. I don't really think 187 has been ineffective, because it has changed the whole, even though the courts have ruled against it for the moment, it has changed the entire understanding and the entire scheme of the country.
Well, very good. Thanks so very much. I want to thank our guest, Georgianne Geyer, for coming on Full Disclosure today to share her perspective about the declining American citizenship and her new book, Americans No More. We want to hear from you, the viewers, on this issue. What do you think? How do you feel? Do you feel that America is in danger of losing her identity and her citizens? And should we be concerned about the decline of citizens' rights and responsibilities? Please call our Full Disclosure Town Hall number at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777, and let us know how you feel. I'm Leslie Dutton. Please join us again for another edition of Full Disclosure.
Full Disclosure is a non-commercial public affairs program sponsored by the Citizens Protection Alliance. For a transcript or videotape copy of today's program, or a listing of airtimes and channels, call our toll-free number at 1-800-867-7777 or visit our website at www.fulldisclosure.net.